Hello, welcome back. It's been a hot minute since I've made any sort of presence on here. Today in this video I wanted to talk about how I got into a clinical master's program and an education and developmental master's program straight out of undergrad, so I didn't take a break to work or anything, and how I did it with virtually no experience, psych-related experience more specifically. And I also want to talk about master's experience, because when you're going through this journey, you hear so many people talk about how it's such a competitive process. You don't really understand why it's competitive, so I wanted to talk more about that and why it is so competitive. It's not because they're only looking for crazy smart people, like I'm not one of those people, but there are other reasons why it's competitive. So if you don't believe yourself to be, like the smartest person in the class, don't worry, you still have just as equal chance of getting in. And that's kind of how I did it, I think. And also I'll be talking about how I did it more specifically. So what grades did I get, what experience I specifically had, all the way from first year to like graduating undergrad, what I am glad that I did and what really helped me get into a master's program and land that interview, and also what I wish I would have done and what could have made my application stronger. So if that's of interest to you, keep watching. Before I get into it, I just wanted to do a little bit of an update. So I was living in Melbourne and now I'm not in Melbourne. I am in apparently not the Sunshine State because it's flooding, but I'm in Brisbane. I'm in a share house, so if I'm a little bit quiet, that's why. I don't want my roommates to think I'm weird. I can show you guys outside in a sec. My view is chef's kiss. Very expensive though. Let's start off with, why is masters so bloody competitive? One is that there's not many spots and there's a lot of applicants. I'll get into why there's not a lot of spots, but typically, for example, in my course there was 15 spots for clinical, and then 15 spots for education and developmental psychology. So I'm in the ed and dev group, but yeah, 15 spots per group, and that is pretty standard, 15 to 20 spots for every university. There's typically a lot more people who graduate from honours, so you could kind of see how that would just naturally make things more competitive. The main reason why there is such a small number of spots is because of resources. When you go into a master's program, you're allocated your own supervisor, or you're in a pair and you get a supervisor. There's a limited amount of supervisors available, so it's not feasible to have a huge cohort. Also, in your master's program you need to get client hours, so you need to actually rack up like 250 hours per semester, client and non-direct client hours. And to get those hours you need physical rooms, and there's not, like, if you have like 60 master's students sharing 5 rooms, it's just not going to work. So they have to keep it to a certain number because they are like actually physically limited in terms of rooms. Next thing is government funding. So unlike a lot of other fields, psych is very much in need. A lot of courses do have CSP places, so Commonwealth supported places. So instead of spending like a full fee place of $70,000 for 2 years, looking at paying like $8,000 for 2 years, which is what I'm doing. Unis have like a certain limited number of CSP places, so the people who get the highest grades will get those places. And when I talk about masters being competitive, it's specifically the 2 years master's program. So there are internship pathways, there are professional psych master's programs, there's like clinical, education, developmental, organizational, that kind of stuff. So typically you'll find that clinical is the most competitive, and I think the reason being is that clinical psychologists get the highest Medicare rebate, and like I've talked to psychologists in the field, and all in all, like you'll earn good money regardless where you go, whether you're a generalist, whether you're an ed and dev psych, or whether you're a clinical psych. So it doesn't really matter. You can do bridging courses later on to transfer into different endorsements. So I could do a bridging course for a year and then be qualified as a clinical psych after my 2 years of endorsement. So it's not that deep. Yeah. You also have to think about, sorry, I have my notes down here. You also have to think about what you want to do. So for me, I really want a work-life balance, because if I have like my own private practice is my main thing, I know I'll just work myself to the absolute bone and take no breaks and like burn out. So what was really appealing to me was the idea of being a school psychologist. I love working with adolescents. I think they're such a inspirational, like, I think they're such a great population to work with. A lot of crazy things happening during that time, and it's really rewarding to help people navigate through that. Also, school holidays is a perk, so you would get term holidays off, and it doesn't really matter how many clients you see, unlike in private practice, you still get paid. So now for the interesting part. How did I do it? Disclaimer, I'm really genuinely not like crazy smart, not the all-knowing psychologist, you know what I mean? In terms of grades, like in my first and second year, I literally had a WAM of 65, which isn't terrible, but it isn't that great either if you're trying to get into honours. The reason why was because I was working a lot, I was living my best life, I wasn't prioritizing studies, I was literally working like full-time hours. I just didn't really click for me at the time. And then third year rolled around, which, if you don't know, masters typically look at your third and fourth year depending on the uni. Some look at your entire grade system, so it varies between unis. But I was like, ah shit, I really have to do something at this point. So in third year I really knuckled down, and I managed to like bring my WAM up to like 75, I think. So fully like 10 points. It was pretty crazy. It was also lockdown, so I literally had nothing else to do. And it's rolled around, which is the most stressful year, like in terms of how much it matters. Like it matters the most in terms of getting into masters, so I was really determined to do well. I ended up getting, sorry, I'm so on edge because I don't want my housemates to hear me and think that I'm crazy. Anyways, I ended up getting an 89 for my honours year. So I got a 92 on my thesis, which was worth 50% of my grade, and then my coursework got a bit lower, but it evened out to an 89, which I'll take. I'm very happy with. In terms of experience, I didn't have a lot of experience. Actually, I'll pull up my laptop and I'll go through my LinkedIn so I don't forget anything. Okay, so I'm kind of Kermit sticker. I've pulled up my LinkedIn, and it just pretty much has my entire resume there. In my first year of uni, I just worked retail. I worked at Coles, and I worked at 𝍊🼼🍊, which I hated. Then in my second year, I started doing slightly more relevant things, a human resources like assistant gig, because I thought I wanted to do org psych and I hated it. So I just worked retail like from second till fourth year at Macpac, which is such a great company to work for. And then I pretty much worked at Monash for most of my life. So I did student success advisor, recruitment conversion officer, student success officer, Monash Connect officer, and then I did a research support, or I'm still doing a research support assistant job. As you can see, nothing is particularly psych related. Universities look at your grades and experience quite evenly. So people that I am in my course with got like a H2A grade, so a second class honours, but had so much experience, and yeah, it just made them like, would make them better clinicians. That was my experience. And so you technically don't need specific psych experience to get into a master's program, but definitely helps. That brings me on to things that I wish I did. I want to just preface that I don't really regret my journey to where I am now. I was doing the best that I could with the tools that I had. So if you're in a similar position where you weren't successful the first time, or you know, you weren't successful getting into honours, don't beat yourself up about it. You literally did the best that you had with the tools that you had at the time. And my family was in the healthcare industry. Like, my mum's a pastry chef, my dad kind of lives overseas, does his own like business thing, so I didn't know what I was doing. It's always a pathway to get to where you are. Might just take a little bit more time, but that honestly doesn't matter. Like you'll learn more. Everyone in my course I'm the youngest in my course, so I'm 21. There are like 2 23 or 24-year-olds, but most people are late 20s or early 30s, because they have that amazing life experience that will help them become the best clinician possible. But in saying that, volunteer. I don't care. Volunteer, work, find an explicit psych organisation, so Headspace, Lifeline, anything that's like explicitly psychology related. Even though I did a lot of psych things, because it was under like a generic headline of like student success officer, people didn't see it as legitimate. Another useful tip, by the way, is start your master's applications before you even start uni. Start thinking about why you want to do masters. Start writing a draft. Just collate all those like annoying documents like driver's license, passport, citizenship certificate if you weren't born here, things like that, and have that in a folder. Or even like make a uni applications folder. Within that, all the different unis you want to apply for. Within that, the different courses, whether it be clinical, organizational, ed and dev, and then start like filling in those things, because some unis have separate like different requirements, and starting to do that will just help you stay really organized and on top of things. Because I promise you, when it comes to October and honours, most people just was like, whatever, I'm not applying to the university because I literally don't have time to write these applications. Honestly, the smartest thing I ever did. I only applied to like a handful of unis because even after doing all of that prep work, it was so laborious applying to universities. Like, you don't understand. So yeah, but if you want to not put yourself through that torture, take a year off, more power to you. You're probably going to be a better clinician for doing that. So I just have issues where I can't take breaks. It's all for me. If you want to know how I got an 89 in honours, or what masters is like, what the interviews were like, anything like that, let me know. But yeah, bye for another 6 months.